Laura sat in the quiet of her home office, the glow of her computer screen casting soft shadows across the room. As a freelance graphic designer, she cherished the freedom her career provided, yet with each project she felt the weight of isolation that her freedom brought, especially with Tom, her husband, away on frequent business trips. The loneliness was becoming more palpable, filling the space around her like a thick fog. Today, as she attempted to immerse herself in the latest project, her internet faltered again. The frustration was immediate and intense, not just with the unreliable connection, but with her broader situation. Tom's travels had increased lately, and his presence at home had dwindled to mere interludes between trips. Each goodbye seemed to stretch longer, each hello more perfunctory. The disconnect between them had grown, leaving Laura to wonder about the emotional distance that mirrored his physical absences. Determined to find at least a temporary solution to one of her problems, Laura picked up her phone to call the internet service provider. She navigated the automated menu with practiced ease, her other hand scrolling through emails that demanded her attention. When the customer service representative finally answered, Laura explained her recurring issue with a calm born from too many similar calls before. "I really need this fixed today," she emphasized, her voice firm yet polite. The representative promised to send a technician first thing in the morning, and Laura hung up, a small victory in hand. The next morning, as promised, there was a knock at her door. Laura opened it to find Alex, a young technician with a bright smile and an air of efficiency. His presence, a stark contrast to the quiet solitude of her usual mornings, brought a surprising lift to her spirits. As he entered carrying his toolbox and laptop, Laura led him to her workspace, explaining the persistent issues she had been facing with her internet connection. Alex set to work immediately, his fingers moving deftly over the cables and his laptop keys clicking softly in the background. Laura returned to her desk, trying to focus on her designs, but found herself watching him. There was something about his focused attention that fascinated her, a meticulousness that resonated with her own approach to her work. As he worked, Alex asked about her career, showing genuine interest in her designs that lay scattered across the desk. Laura found herself opening up about her projects, discussing the challenges and rewards of working as a freelance designer. The conversation meandered from professional to personal interests, and Laura was surprised by how easy it was to talk to Alex. He shared anecdotes from his own experiences in tech support, and they both laughed over the quirks of working with technology and clients. The ease of their interaction was a stark reminder to Laura of what had been missing in her interactions with Tom lately. With Alex, conversation flowed freely, a stark contrast to the strained exchanges with her husband, which were often punctuated by the tension of unsaid words and unmet expectations. As Alex continued to work on her internet connection, Laura pondered this newfound realization, the first threads of doubt weaving through her thoughts about her marriage. As Alex delved into the wiring and settings that might be causing the internet disruptions, he casually mentioned the band on Laura's t-shirt. "You're a fan of the Arctic Monkeys?" he asked with a hint of surprise and appreciation. Laura looked down at her shirt, smiling. "Yeah, absolutely, have been for years. It's rare to find someone who recognizes them right off the bat." Alex grinned, his interest clearly piqued. "I saw them live a couple of years ago. Incredible performance. This revelation sparked a lively exchange about their favorite songs and concert experiences, bridging the gap between client and service provider to something more personal and relaxed. As he adjusted his tools and moved around to check different connection points, Alex shared a funny anecdote about trying to set up a sound system right before a storm, making Laura laugh more freely than she had in weeks. "It's always when you're in a hurry, right? Nature just knows," he joked, his tone light and easy. This interaction felt refreshing to Laura, a stark contrast to her recent conversations with Tom, which were often rushed and functional, focusing more on schedules than sentiments. Alex's presence, with his easy humour and open demeanour, made her feel unexpectedly at ease, turning a routine service call into an enjoyable morning. Their conversation naturally veered into movies and recent shows they had watched. Alex mentioned a sci-fi series that Laura hadn't heard of, and he enthusiastically gave a brief rundown of the plot. "You should check it out. Based on what you've told me about your tastes, I think you'd really like it," he suggested, his eyes bright, with the shared joy of recommending something beloved. Laura noted the suggestion, genuinely interested. "I will, thanks. It's been a while since I got hooked on a new series." She appreciated the recommendation, feeling a connection over the shared interests that seemed to effortlessly deepen their rapport. As Alex wrapped up his assessment of her setup, he explained what he was doing in a way that was easy to understand, showing her on his tablet what might be causing the issues and how he planned to fix them. His ability to communicate complex information in a digestible way was impressive, and reminded Laura of the kind of conversations she used to have with Tom when they first met, filled with eager exchanges of knowledge and discoveries. The morning progressed with a comfortable camaraderie developing between them, the kind that occasionally made Laura pause and reflect on her current emotional state. The ease and understanding with which Alex interacted with her highlighted a stark contrast to her life's recent norm. This unexpected encounter was quickly becoming a bright spot in her otherwise routine and increasingly solitary days. Over coffee, during a brief break from the technical tasks, the atmosphere shifted from light-hearted banter to something more introspective. Alex poured them both a cup, the steam curling up into the air, forming a transient barrier that seemed to momentarily shield them from the world outside. Laura held the warm mug in her hands, the heat seeping into her palms, grounding her as she gathered the courage to voice thoughts that had been swirling in her mind, unspoken, for months. "It's strange," she began, her voice soft but clear, "how you can be surrounded by people and still feel so isolated." Alex nodded, his expression one of understanding rather than pity. "I know what you mean," he responded, his tone equally soft. "After my last relationship ended, I realized how much of my social life was tied up with my partner. Once she was gone, the silence was overwhelming. This admission seemed to open a door for Laura, and she found herself stepping through it. "It's similar for me," she admitted. "Tom is away so much, and when he is home, it's like he isn't really here. We're like two ships passing in the night. I miss the connection we used to have." The air between them was charged with the weight of these confessions, each shared word weaving a thread of understanding that drew them subtly closer. Alex sipped his coffee, considering his words carefully before speaking again. "It's hard, rebuilding your life around that kind of void, but sometimes it's those changes that push you to find new connections, ones you might never have expected." Laura looked at Alex, struck by the resonance of his words with her own experience. Here was someone who not only understood her situation, but who could articulate the vague feelings of loss and hope she had been struggling to reconcile. The conversation deepened, with Alex sharing more about his journey of finding balance and fulfillment post-breakup. He talked about the small joys he had rediscovered in his solitude, cooking for one, exploring the city, reconnecting with old friends. His story was not one of immediate recovery, but a testament to the slow, often painful process of healing and finding oneself again. Laura listened, her heart swelling with a mixture of sadness and inspiration. Alex's resilience was a mirror in which she saw her potential path, one marked by self-discovery and perhaps eventual peace with her situation. His openness about his vulnerabilities encouraged her to reflect on her strengths and the possibilities that still lay ahead despite the current loneliness. As they continued to talk, the initial layers of casual acquaintance peeled away, revealing a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. This connection, sparked by shared experiences of loss and renewal, felt like a beacon for Laura, a sign that perhaps, in the midst of her struggling marriage, there was room for growth and new beginnings. Their coffee cups emptied, but the conversation left a lasting warmth, a sense of camaraderie that promised to endure beyond the confines of a service call. As they returned to the task at hand, both felt a subtle shift in their dynamics, aware that they had crossed into a territory of emotional intimacy that was both comforting and complex. The room suddenly seemed smaller, the air charged with an energy that neither Laura nor Alex could ignore. As they stood close, discussing life's unexpected twists, a moment of silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken words and burgeoning feelings. In that quiet, Laura's heart raced, aware of Alex's presence in a way that was no longer just friendly or comforting, but something more intense, more compelling. Alex looked into Laura's eyes, and what began as a professional visit melted into a moment of pure connection. The emotional barriers they had carefully maintained began to crumble under the weight of their shared vulnerabilities and the comfort they found in each other's company. He moved slightly closer, his breath mingling with hers, their faces just inches apart. Laura's mind raced with thoughts of Tom, her husband, who seemed so far away, not just physically but emotionally. The loneliness that had enveloped her life echoed loudly in the quiet room, and before she could stop herself, she leaned forward, driven by a longing for connection, for understanding, for someone to see her and truly see her struggles. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle at first, almost questioning the reality of the moment. But soon the kiss deepened, driven by the pent-up emotions and unmet needs that both had been carrying. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the feeling of being understood and desired. However, as the kiss broke, the reality of what had happened crashed down on Laura. The rush of excitement that had surged through her was quickly replaced by a wave of guilt. She stepped back, her eyes wide with the realization of her betrayal. Alex, too, seemed to snap out of the moment, his expression one of concern as he took in Laura's distressed look. "I'm sorry, Laura, I shouldn't have—" Alex began, his voice trailing off, full of regret. His initial reaction was to apologize, to take back the kiss, but the truth was, it had happened, and it had revealed the profound disconnect Laura felt in her marriage, a truth she could no longer ignore. Laura held up her hand, stopping him mid-apology. "No, Alex, this is on me too. I let it happen. I don't know what I wanted," she stammered, her confusion and conflict evident in her voice. She was torn between the comfort she had found in Alex's understanding and the commitment she had made to her husband. "I need to think," Laura said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to understand what this means for my marriage, for me." She was visibly shaken, the impact of their actions hitting her fully now. Alex nodded, his own emotions a mix of concern and regret. "Of course, take all the time you need. I'll go now," he said quietly, beginning to gather his tools, his earlier task of fixing the internet seemingly trivial now compared to the emotional complexity that had unfolded. As Alex left, Laura was left alone with her thoughts, the silence of the room now a stark reminder of the solitude in her marriage that had driven her to seek understanding in the arms of another. The confusion and guilt swirled within her, a tumultuous mix that she knew she had to address before she could make any decisions about her future. In the immediate aftermath, The tension in the air was palpable. Tom's face, usually calm and controlled, was a mask of shock and anger. His early return, intended as a surprise, had turned into his worst nightmare. "Laura, what is going on?" His voice, usually so sure and steady, faltered under the weight of his disbelief. Laura felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her. Her heart raced, her thoughts a jumble of confusion and fear. "Tom, It's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice barely audible. But the words felt hollow, even to her own ears. The truth was clear in the charged space between them. Tom turned his gaze from Laura to Alex, who stood awkwardly, his expression one of regret and apology. "I think I should leave," Alex said quickly, wanting to escape the intensity of the moment, aware that his presence only served to complicate the already volatile situation. "No, stay, I want to hear this," Tom said, his voice firm, his eyes still locked on Laura. He wanted answers not just from her, but from the man who had intruded into their home, their life. Alex hesitated, looking at Laura for any sign of what to do next. Laura nodded slightly, her face pale, understanding that they owed Tom an explanation. She swallowed hard, trying to gather her thoughts. "Tom, this isn't how I wanted you to find out. I've been so lonely and She trailed off, unable to articulate the depth of her isolation and the desperation that had driven her to seek solace in someone else. Tom's anger seemed to waver, replaced momentarily by a hint of pain. "Find out what, Laura? That you're lonely, or that you're seeing someone else?" His voice cracked on the last few words, the hurt evident. Laura's eyes filled with tears, the weight of her choices crashing down on her. "I was lonely, yes, but it wasn't just that. We've been drifting apart for so long, and I was weak." Her admission was a whisper, a painful acknowledgement of her failings. Tom looked at Alex, who stood silent, the gravity of the situation written all over his face. "I think you should go now," Tom said quietly, his tone resigned. Alex nodded, gave Laura a sympathetic look, and quietly exited, leaving the couple to confront their crumbling marriage alone. Once Alex had left, Tom turned back to Laura. "Is this why you've been so distant? Because of him?" His question was direct, seeking not just the facts, but the emotional truth behind her betrayal. Laura shook her head, the tears now freely flowing. "No, not because of him. It's deeper than that. I think we've been unhappy for a long time, Tom, both of us. We just never faced it until now." The room fell silent, save for the soft sound of Laura's sobs. Tom stood motionless, processing the depth of their mutual unhappiness that had finally come to light in the most painful way. The confrontation was just the beginning of a difficult conversation about where they stood and where they would go from here. Tom paced the room slowly, each step echoing the tumult of emotions swirling within him. Laura watched, her heart heavy with guilt and apprehension about the future of their marriage. "We need to decide what we're going to do," Tom finally said, stopping to face her, his expression one of worn resignation mixed with lingering affection. Laura nodded, wiping away tears, knowing this conversation was necessary but dreading its potential outcomes. "I know I've made a terrible mistake, and I'm so sorry, Tom. But I think we've both been unhappy for a long time. Maybe we need help to figure out if we can, or even if we should, try to fix this," she suggested hesitantly, the idea of counselling feeling like a lifeline in the storm that had become their relationship. Tom's reaction was mixed, his hurt evident, but so was his uncertainty. "Do you think counselling can help us? After everything?" His voice was thick with doubt, almost as if he was unsure whether he wanted to know the answer. "I think it's worth trying," Laura responded softly, her own doubts shadowing her hope. If there's any part of you that still wants this to work, I think we should give it a chance, not just for our past, but maybe for a future that we might still have together." Tom looked at her for a long moment, the silence stretching between them. Finally he sighed, a deep sound that seemed to carry the weight of their years together. "I don't know if I can get past this, Laura, but I also can't make this decision right now. I'm too angry, too hurt. Maybe a counsellor could help us sort through all this mess." Laura reached out her hand tentatively, and after a moment Tom took it, their fingers entwining, a small yet significant gesture of mutual grief and remaining affection. "I'm willing to try if you are," Tom said quietly, the decision seeming to draw some of the tension from the room. The agreement to seek counselling was a first step, but both knew it was just the beginning of a long and uncertain journey. They would need to delve deep into their feelings, confront painful truths, and learn to communicate in ways that had been absent for too long in their marriage. As they sat down to look up potential counsellors, the task felt daunting. Choosing someone to help mend their fractured relationship was critical, and they approached it with the seriousness it deserved. They discussed what they hoped to achieve through counselling, setting some preliminary boundaries to ensure they both felt safe and respected in the process. This planning process was meticulous, each action underpinned by a fragile hope that perhaps, through guided discussions and professional support, they might find their way back to each other, or at least to a peaceful resolution. The conversation that had started with confrontation ended with a cooperative effort to face their future, whatever it might hold. The first session of marriage counselling was as intense and emotional as both Laura and Tom had anticipated. Seated together yet feeling worlds apart, they listened as the counsellor laid out the framework of their sessions together. It would be a safe space designed to foster openness and honesty, where both could share their feelings without fear of judgment or immediate repercussion. Tom took the lead, expressing his feelings of betrayal and his struggle to understand Laura's actions. His voice was steady but occasionally cracked under the emotional strain. He shared how her actions had made him question not just their marriage but his self-worth, wondering aloud what he could have done differently to prevent this. Laura listened, her heart aching with regret, as Tom articulated his pain. When it was her turn, she spoke candidly about her loneliness and the sense of abandonment that had gnawed at her as Tom's business trips became more frequent. She explained that her lapse with Alex was never about love, but a misguided attempt to fill the growing void she felt at home. She assured Tom that her feelings for him were still strong, that her commitment to their marriage was genuine, and that she was prepared to do whatever it took to rebuild the trust she had broken. The counsellor guided them through exercises designed to improve their communication. One exercise involved speaking and listening without interruption, forcing them to truly hear each other's perspective. Another focused on expressing needs and expectations without accusations or defensiveness, aiming to rebuild the foundational respect that had eroded over time. By the end of the session, both Laura and Tom were emotionally exhausted, but also relieved to have started the process of healing. They had begun to see the contours of their disconnection and the paths they might take to reconnect. The counsellor assigned them homework, daily conversations where they shared something they appreciated about each other, aiming to rebuild the positive emotional bank account they had once enjoyed. As they left the counsellor's office, there was a tentative sense of hope between them. They agreed to set aside time each evening to talk, not just about their day, but about their feelings and fears. These conversations, though difficult at first, slowly became something they both looked forward to. It was during these moments that they began to remember and rediscover the reasons they had fallen in love in the first place. Tom also made an effort to be more present at home, reducing his travel and making a point to involve Laura in decisions that affected them both. Laura, in turn, focused on expanding her social life, joining a local art class and a book club, filling her days with activities that brought her joy and a sense of community. Their path to reconciliation was not smooth. There were setbacks and painful days, moments when the hurt seemed too great to overcome. But there were also moments of laughter and reconnection, small victories in the hard work of rebuilding. Each step forward was a testament to their commitment to not just stay together, but to grow together, forging a deeper, more enduring bond than they had ever had before.